All right, we are live. What's up, everybody? Here, Murder Metal Mayhem, hanging out with my good friend, Mr. Unfiltered Lucky. How you doing, buddy?
Good, man. How you doing, Pete?
I'm doing all right. I'm doing all right. Still kind of blind, but this time of the day, I can see a little bit better than I can in the bright light. I did a live at like 4 o'clock on Saturday, and it was like I was on the surface of the sun. I couldn't see anything. It was terrible, but got some people here. Been anxious to see the two of us get together, so I've been looking forward to this. I know you're a busy guy, so trying to get you pinned down and it's my schedules now went from crazy like you to all of a sudden all the time in the world. So I realize not everybody has all the time in the world, but
That's for sure. That's
yeah,
for sure. It's always a juggling game. It always seems like it's always a juggling game.
it does. It does. And then I wonder, now that I'm retired from the day job, I sit here and think, how in the hell did I do all this stuff while I worked? Like wrote books, doing a weekly podcast, then started the channel. Like it was like crazy. Although the channel started after I was semi-retired, so that was a little different. But then all this stuff happened with the necrotizing fasciitis, and that took me into full retirement. And so it's weird. Every day is the same. There's no weekends. It's just every day ends in Y, and I'm just plugging away. I'm thankful I'm working and I'm busy, and I enjoy watching, you guys, your channel and AR and the few that I follow, and that's all good. And seeing your numbers up there, did you pass 20,000 yet?
No, but I'm real close.
Oh,
I'm
dude, I
I'm I'm
saw.
real close. Yeah.
Yeah, so everybody, we got to get lucky over 20,000. So go over there and sub on his channel. I got the banner here I made, so everybody gets over there to Lucky's channel and goes and subscribes to him. And then while you're at it, you can subscribe to Murder Metal Mayhem because um, I'm uh, I'm approaching 13,000. So I'm
Your
creeping
channel's
up
really
there.
growing. Yeah, your channel's really growing, man.
Thank
That's
you.
awesome.
Yeah, it's been going really well. And yesterday I threw kind of a curveball at the crowd. I knew it wasn't going to get very many views compared to the Idaho 4, but I had an audio version of one of my short stories and I threw it out there to see if people would dig it. And I got about 500 views to it, and people seem to like it. But if you like horror and suspense, check it out. It's my story, Chapel of Bones. It's about the bone chapels of Europe.
I
And a
watched it.
couple, oh, you did?
I did. I watched it. I
Oh,
think it's a
cool.
great idea. I think that you're a great storyteller. So I feel like it's a great idea to kind of share those. I really enjoy stuff like that. So
That's cool. Yeah, as you know, man, if it doesn't say Idaho 4 on it, a lot of people are just like, that's all they want to hear about. So, um,
I know.
I've
But
been-
it's
it's
always fun to
okay.
share those stories and to tell some stories. I really enjoyed it.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah, I enjoyed doing, I didn't enjoy doing, I hate recording my audiobooks, but it's very expensive to have them done. And people like my voice. So it's like, all right, I'll do it. But I hate doing it. But
I'd
I've
rather
done
listen.
two.
I would rather listen to an audiobook myself than I wish I was more of a reader. I wish I really enjoyed reading, but I prefer the audiobooks because I can listen to
Really?
them while I'm driving.
Yeah. If you drive a lot, totally, I could see that. My son, he's a custodian and he likes them because he could just throw in his earbuds and he works or second shift and nobody's around and he just listens to books. They say 50% of book consumers do it by audio.
I could see
So
that.
that's what prompted me to start doing them is, man, I'm missing out on half of my audience by not doing them.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I've done two of them so far. They're on Audible if anybody listening wants to check it out. I got one on my website too that for the last book I did, you could get the audio book or the physical books. I like the physical books, but right now with cataracts, I don't like any book because I can't read it,
Right.
and it's not been fun. But anyway, I wanted to get wet the whistle a little bit as people file in here. We're getting up over 100 people already. I think we're going to have a good crowd tonight with you here with me, Lucky, and going to talk about some Idaho 4. I mean, I know the crowd, that's what they want. And of course, we're going to give that to them and let them, get the full gist of us being together talking about this case that just blows people's minds. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. I remember when I first started watching your channel, and I don't know how many times I heard you say, this just doesn't make any sense. And when you sit there and break this case down, like every step of the way, you find yourself saying that, don't you? Like, this just doesn't make any friggin' sense.
Yeah, I mean the whole way. I feel like that's why a lot of people are following the Idaho 4 case, is because there's just something off about it. There's just something that it doesn't feel right. There's something off about this case, and I think that whether it be the suspect or whether it be the roommates or whether it be the investigation, I think that a lot of people are following this case because of the feeling that they get when they start following it, because it doesn't make sense. Right. And
it's like watching a David Lynch movie.
Yeah, like something's
what?
off. You don't know what it is. You don't know what it is exactly that's off, but something's off about this case.
Yeah. That's why I say Moscow, Idaho is a combination between Children of the Corn, Twin Peaks, the Twilight Zone, and the Sopranos all in one blender. And it's just like violent and skanky and just, I mean, everything about it is just awful.
Well, and constantly changing. I feel like this case, I feel like we're almost following a different case now than we were following 2 years ago, because I feel like, now we have the details, or some of the details, and some of those details that don't confirm anything that we thought that we knew in the beginning.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you're right. There's so many things that have come out here. Thankfully, Hitler, that's the one thing that I find that's good about him. At least he's letting some of this stuff loose, but it's like, what was the point of hiding this information? I heard somebody say that today, and I thought that's really a good point. Like when you actually find out, well, let's say the 911 tape, when you actually listen to it and you're sitting there going, well, what was the top? I mean, they weren't talking about the JFK assassination or the grassy knoll or where's Jimmy Hoffa. You know what I mean? It's not some sort of like national secret. I don't understand what could have been, using the 911 tape as an example. Like, what could have been on that you think they didn't want us to know? Do you think maybe, I was talking to AR about this last night. I was wondering if it was Hunter Johnson. They didn't want people knowing that he was on there, but I don't know why that would matter. The guy was like a permanent fixture around that house anyway. Every time you saw a video there, old Hunter comes walking out of the house and
he did
down, and he's like ever present.
I've always felt like after we heard the 911 tape, I felt like the reason they didn't release it is because it made no sense. It seemed very strange because I felt like they were calling 911 for a totally different crime.
Right.
It didn't really add up. I mean, why was Bethany hysterical if she hadn't seen anything at that point? And then everybody else was just kind of standing around saying that their roommate was passed out and wasn't waking up.
It sounded like it was not real. It didn't flow like a normal conversation, And
no.
Like I've been saying in multiple videos and in a couple lives already, is if they called 911 at noon, like we're led to believe, and nobody on that call. If they called 911 at noon, I had me on my phone too. When they called 911,
let me put my headphones on. I've got my speaker on.
There you go. When they called 911 at noon and nobody mentioned the word blood or stench or anything like that, and then 5.5 hours later, Kathy Mabbitt shows up and she's saying it looks like Charles Manson and the family stopped by for a visit. So I would like to know what happened between noon and 5:30. Somebody must have done something, or somebody constructed this false idea that this was a gory, violent scene. Because if it was truly that bad, I don't care how jaded you are. You walk in, some of these college kids are just really out there, but you walk into a room with two people, Xana and Ethan, butchered, blood all over the walls. Like I said, like Charles Manson came by for a party. And you're not going to mention that. You're not going to be like stammering and like probably screaming and throwing up and all of those visceral reactions you would get. These guys were acting like they were playing a card game or something. Like, I don't know. It was bizarre.
It was bizarre. I mean, when I heard the call, I didn't really, like I said, it didn't really connect the two, because I felt like when we heard this 911 call, I felt like what we were going to hear was a bunch of people, freaking out in the background. That's what I thought that we were going to hear. So when we actually heard the call, I thought, this is odd. I mean, they're calling about someone who's passed out. I would think that they're in the house because the 911 operator is asking them if Xana's breathing or she's asking them questions, and they're answering her. So I'm assuming that they can see Xana.
You would assume. I mean, normally when you call 911, you're like kneeling by the victim's side, trying to do everything you can to save their life. That's why you're calling and getting people to come over. But either they were in the other room. I mean, that's almost what it seemed like. They couldn't see her. I don't know.
That's what I thought. I figured at first I thought maybe she was behind a closed door,
right?
And they couldn't see her. But it was a very confusing call. And then I thought it was very strange that it seemed like they called 911, like they pre-called 911, like
before they knew that they hadn't been in the room yet.
Right. They didn't even know that if there was an emergency.
I mean, it doesn't make any sense to call 911. Why? Because you were knocking on your roommate's door and they didn't answer you. I mean, that seems a little bit over, doesn't make any sense. But like you said, you hear them opening the door up. At least that's what you think. In the middle of the call, it's like, why would you call 911 in the first place? Why are you calling 911?
Right, in the first place. And why is Bethany freaking out? If Bethany hasn't seen anything, why is Bethany freaking out?
Right.
Because it seemed like when Hunter Johnson's girlfriend, is it Emily?
I think so, yeah.
When she got on the phone, she sounded pretty calm.
She did.
She was talking pretty calm. Dylan sounded pretty calm for someone who was freaked out just a few hours earlier.
Right.
And it sounded strange because when Hunter Johnson says, get out,
right,
at that point, you're thinking that he has seen the crime scene, but then he gets on with the 911 dispatcher and he doesn't seem to be freaking out at all.
No, he doesn't. He's like, they want to talk to you, and he hands the phone to somebody else, but he wasn't, like you said, all freaking out or anything like anybody would be. And then so you guys know I'm still dealing with the cataract issue, but on my phone, I could see the chat really well. So I'm going to be using my phone so don't think I'm distracted here. I'm actually trying to follow along in the chat. And I had a really good question, and I wish I could throw it on the screen, but I can't see it very well. But Jim Reed said, wouldn't they see Ethan's body before Xana's? Exactly. You got a 6 foot, what was he, 6'2" or 3" guy in a little 12 by 12 room if that's about how big it was, standard bedroom in a house, 12 by 12. A 6'2", I think he was taller, but let's just say 6'2", butchered man on the floor that you have to step over probably to get to Xana. Again, why wouldn't you get on the phone and say, oh, Ethan's in there too? I don't understand why they never mentioned Ethan when you wouldn't be able to see Xana without seeing Ethan. I couldn't imagine how the two wouldn't have been on top of each other practically or side by side. I mean, certainly close enough you'd see them,
Well, I mean, yeah, that bedroom was the size of a walk-in closet. I
Right.
mean, how do you find Xana and not see Ethan at the same time?
Exactly. Because we heard he was propped up. I had heard one time that Ethan was propped up against the bedroom door, and they needed Hunter to push the door open because Ethan was behind the door. So I could halfway believe that. But again, why wouldn't Hunter have seen Ethan? What's behind this door? That's hard to push, right? You look in and you see, oh my God, it's Ethan. There's Xana. And now you're freaking out because the two of them are gone. But yet they're not having that reaction. They're not acting like, what they would have seen. They were acting like they're drunk and passed out,
Right. It's very odd that the whole interaction between Dylan and Bethany and then the 911 call, the whole interaction is strange, and that's one of the things that I've looked into a lot, because contrary to what a lot of people believe, I do try to find connections between Bryan Kohberger and this crime. And it seems weird, because if Bryan Kohberger did commit this crime, then how do you explain all the weirdness that was going on with Dylan and Bethany?
Right.
That doesn't make sense at all.
No, you're exactly right. When I first found out about this case, I know we talked about this when I did that interview with you. I said, when I first heard about it and I heard there was DNA on the scene, I was like, I'm out, like this is already a done deal, And then as I learned about transfer DNA and all that, then I was like, okay, so this DNA is not what we thought it was. But even so, I still thought, I mean, the police just don't pluck somebody up off the street without it, without the goods. So they must have something on this guy. And so, like you, I was trying to figure out, what was the motive? Like, why would this guy do it? Maybe he was like obsessed with one of them, or he was going to the Mad Greek all the time and like acting all weird, I thought it had to be something like that,
Right.
But as you look into that stuff, none of that stuff pans out with him, none of it.
That's what's so odd. I felt like we would have a connection by now.
Right.
Whatever kind of connection it was, whether it be he ate at the Mad Greek or he had met one of the roommates at Way Park or whatever was going on. Sure. I felt like we would even have at least the slightest connection by this point. And so far, I haven't seen that.
Nothing. Yeah. And I mean, on the Murder Metal Mayhem podcast, where I do the solved cases, my gosh, we've done 260 something episodes already. And which is one case after another where these people are very mentally disturbed and they do these horrible acts, but he doesn't act like that. Like he just doesn't have a lot of those tendencies, like a lot of those killers do that I've talked about ad nauseum on the podcast. He just seems to defy that. You got a loner type, so I really don't see him working in with like a team or even one person. Do you see a guy like that, like pairing up with somebody to do that?
No, I don't see Bryan Kohberger having a big friend group. I don't see Bryan Kohberger. He seems very much like he's a loner.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a sad story, honestly. I mean, I'm the type of person, I love being around people. So, now that I've been, confined to this wheelchair. I've been alone a lot and I don't like it, but
Right.
it makes me sad to hear that a guy like that, had no friends, but, if it was his autism, I mean, his brain was wired different,
I think that, I mean, didn't his neighbor at his apartment say that Brian's dad had asked
That's
him if
right.
he would be friends with him, and kind of hang out with them a little bit? And then he said that he did invite Brian Koberger to do a few things, and that he
Yeah, the
creeped out
pool
his
party
wife.
or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, but he said his wife was creeped out by him.
Oh, really? Okay. I remember the neighbor, but I didn't remember about the wife. Yeah, I mean, he does, again, with the autism stuff. My daughter works with autistic kids. And so I had made the call like a year ago that I thought he was autistic just because of the OCD thing with the garbage,
Right.
and the insomnia and some of the kind of telltale signs. But now that he's been officially diagnosed, the mysteries out there, but he just doesn't strike me. I know there was a period of time where I thought maybe he could have been somehow connected with the frat, but I'm thinking of all people on the face of the earth that Brian Koberger would hang out with or even talk to, those idiots across the street at the frat house would be the last people I think Brian Koberger would want to talk to, right? I mean,
Well, and you have to remember too that he was 8 years older than these
true,
students. So
true.
I think it would seem, strange that they all hung out. He doesn't seem to me like the type that hangs out.
No.
He seems very involved in his studies. That's probably why he was, why he was where he was. He was working on his PhD and stuff like that. And it's probably because he didn't really have much of a social life.
Right.
You know?
That's true. That's true. And I know that in the early days of the case, and I know I toyed with it some too, is the whole Brent Kopaka thing. Like, did those
Yeah.
two know each other? I mean, they did some things that were similar. They ran. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it could have been he met him out running one day. They lived in Pullman together. And crazy, they lived 40 minutes away from each other when they both lived in Pennsylvania, which is even weirder, But
Yeah.
do you think there's any connection between those two?
I mean, it's hard to say. I don't believe that. I don't believe Brent Kopaka is involved in this at all.
Yeah,
Brent Kopaka was 36 years old. I
right.
mean, you're talking about someone who's so far removed from college life. And Steve Gonsalves said himself that he would never see those students hanging out with someone who was 36 years old.
True.
To me, 36 is not old, but when you're
Right.
20, 21 years
Yeah.
old,
30 is like ancient,
yeah, your
so
parents are probably only 40. So,
right.
so
That's
you're not
true.
trying to hang out with somebody that's close to your parents' age when you're in
Right.
college.
Right. No, that's a
But
good
I don't
point.
know, but it's possible. I mean, if he knew Brian Koberger, then that could be a difference. But I wouldn't see him having a connection to the students, at least.
Right. No, I agree with you. I see a friendly face in the chat here. Lucky we got AR Hayes lurking about out there. So thanks,
Yes.
AR, for stopping in and keeping everything in control of the chat. We got a few mods out there, so anybody wanting to be dumb, you'll get zapped out of there real quick. So we don't need any of that here. Don't tolerate it at all. But yeah, I don't know, get into topics before I even had the plan to do that. I think that's what's fun about doing these lives is you just kind of go with it. But before I forget, guys, let me bring up a couple of quick things about what we're going to do here tonight. We're going to go till 9:30 Central, so an hour and a half. Keep it at that. The way I've set the chat is you need to be a subscriber before you can post in the chat. So if you're not a sub, please do that. I think you need to be a sub for like 5 minutes and then you can chat. It just helps bring the subscriber numbers up. So I just passed 12,600. So thank you to everybody. And I know Lucky's trying to get to 20. So we need to subscribe to both channels while you're here and do that for us. We appreciate it. Of course, like the video, like the stream, and that helps it get out there to more people. We're going to do our best to respond to questions. Like I said, I'm going to be looking at my phone because I've got it set for blackout so I could see a white on black background. It's easier for me. So that works out good. A few have asked every week. I get this asking about doing donations or super chats. Guys, that's up to you. I don't ever ask for that kind of stuff, but if you want to do that, feel free to do that. I'll put a banner up here in a few minutes with the info on how to do that. You could do PayPal, you could do Cash App, or Super Chat. And again, I appreciate that very much, but not required. You could also buy some merch if you want. I'll throw that up there as we go through tonight. MurderMentalMayhem.com. I got t-shirts. I got adult activity books. You know you want one of those. And got my books. It's all in the same store too, so you could put it in a big shopping cart. I got short stories, novels, and everything. I posted that Chapel of Bones story. We were talking about that earlier. So if you like that kind of stuff, you would like the books that I write. So, and the Horns High Club, you guys are the membership here. There's not going to be a members only live after this one. I'll do that over the weekend. And Lucky, how is your new membership going? What's it called? And give us some insight into it.
It's going great. I called it the Unfiltered Fam, and it's growing slowly, which is great for me because I'm still learning how the ins and outs of how to do lives and stuff like that. So a lot of this is really new to me. So it's kind of nice to be able to kind of ease into it with members who I know. I've seen my members, I've seen their names. I know, I've chatted with them in the comments, and it's a really cool membership, and I'm glad that it's growing the way that it is, because it's giving me a little bit of an opportunity to grow into it and kind of get to know my members, because that's one of the big reasons I wanted to start doing memberships, is because I wanted to be able to have a community where we were all like-minded and we were all kind of had the same focus, and just have a good, respectful discussion about true crime, and that's what I'm excited about as far as doing memberships. I really appreciate everyone who has joined as a member, and that's my goal, is to create just a nice, solid community of people who just want to talk about true crime.
Right. That's awesome, man. I know I've tried to open it up to my members to talk about some cases other than the Idaho 4. And one of those cases I'm going to do a long form video on, and I'm actually going to do it with one of my subscribers. I'm not sure if she's a member or not.
Very cool.
But Wendy Nelligan, she's I know a friend of A.R. Hayes's group community. And so Wendy and I, she's a nurse, but she was really super interested in a case that I'm interested in, which is an old case, but it's very, very similar to Idaho 4 with all the craziness, but the West Memphis 3. I think that's a great case to talk about police corruption, to talk about evidence that was completely screwed up. All of those things that that they say, are just the classic stuff that you run into with these cases like Idaho 4 with the police, or with just botched evidence, just one thing after another. And in West Memphis 3, a guy was on death row for 20 something years and finally was exonerated. But I think it's a fascinating case, and I know that it's probably not going to get the views that the Idaho 4 does, but I just think it's important for people that follow the community to expose yourself to other cases, because there's
Absolutely.
some really good ones out there. I know you were all about the Gene Hackman case because of your
I
personal
was.
side of that. That was really cool, man.
I try to. The Gene Hackman case was, and there's still so much coming out about that. I mean, it wasn't anything nefarious really, but there's still information coming out about that. But I think that, for me, the West Memphis 3 was one of the cases that I really dove into, because that was one of those cases where, so I've told this story before, but when I was in middle school, my best friend took his dad's life, and it happened in a very heinous way.
Man.
And I kind of got caught up in that because he was my best friend. I was at their house all the time. I obviously didn't know anything about it. We were young, but we listened to heavy metal music. This is something that you can appreciate, Pete. So we listened to heavy metal music, and my buddy had heavy metal posters all over his walls. He had everything from Ozzy Osbourne to Iron Maiden to Judas Priest, and he had all of these posters. And I remember watching the news, and this was back before the internet. So this was back when you didn't get up to the minute news. You got morning news or you got evening news.
Right.
And I just remember seeing on the news that he was, a satanic demon worshiper.
Right.
And that was back in those days when if you listened to heavy metal, then you were, some kind of devil
panic. Yeah.
Right. And so it was all over the news. And when I was questioned, it was all about this satanic movement. Right. And I was like, we just like to listen to heavy metal music. It had nothing to do with say anything satanic at all. But they tried to paint this crime as, a sacrifice of some sort. And it wasn't that at all. They had some issues with between him and his dad. And he took his dad's life. It had nothing to do with the heavy metal music. It had nothing to do with any of that stuff. So, so when the West Memphis 3 came out, and it was kind of the same thing, these kids, they liked heavy metal music
shirts, and they listened to metal, and
right.
The leader of the group wrote these real creepy poems and stuff. And I'm thinking, man, I was writing that stuff in 4th grade. Like hell, they'd have scooped me up off the street, for listening to metal and writing creepy music, So it really hits home with me for sure. But, it's funny with that satanic panic. I mean, when I first started doing the channel and I came up with the idea to do the 666 seconds, it was kind of a goof, And people, for the most part, realize it's just kind of a goof. It's a shtick, whatever. And every now and then I'll get people like really upset, like you need to find God and all this stuff. And it's like, whoa. Yeah. No, it's nothing like that. Like, no, I'm not worshiping the devil. I get where you're coming from, but trust me, it's not that. It's just a goof. It's the heavy metal guy's way of saying F you to all those people that labeled us as satanic worshipers and all this stuff back in the day. It's just kind of a gag. It's not meant to be serious,
Well, and I think that was kind of the draw to heavy metal music too, was that, everybody hated it, and so you wanted to, that was kind of the draw to it was, one of the things I always loved about heavy metal music was the album covers and the t-shirts and the graphics, the imagery, I guess
they had to cover it with paper because it was so bad, it was like buying a porn mag at the gas station, with the paper over the cover so you can't see it,
right.
And the PMRC with the warning stickers they put on, they sold more albums than they prevented the sale of albums by putting big stickers on them that says warning, this is objectionable or whatever whatever it said, it did the opposite of what they wanted.
Well, and it's kind of wild how far we've come. I mean, back in the day, I
Oh,
remember
God.
Motley Crue said "shout at the devil," and everybody wanted to cancel them and ban them.
Yeah.
But if you listen to the music nowadays, you're going to hear some wild stuff.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I always use this as an example of what you're talking about. There's a black metal band. I can't remember the name of the band, but they killed their bass player, chopped him up, and used his bones to make a necklace for the other members to wear.
Oh, wow.
So we've gone that far. I mean, when you go from Motley Crue, smoking in the boys' room, or shout at the devil, to that, it's like, wow. I mean,
All the stories,
nothing
all
is
the
sacred.
stories.
Yeah. Crazy.
When I met, I had gone to a show and I met Ronnie James Dio.
Oh, cool.
And he's like 5'1". He was maybe
small.
5 foot, And I remember I kept thinking, because he was part of that whole thing with this whole movement and stuff, and it was interesting back in the day, But I just remember how far off the media was about my friend being a devil worshiper, because he wasn't a devil. We just liked heavy metal music,
Right. And even the horns thing, I mentioned this in my last live. Ronnie James Dio will tell you, because this is not the devil horns. This is the Malocchio, which is an Italian custom to ward off the evil. It's the opposite of what you think it is, It's not a celebratory satanic thing. It's get away. It's the Malocchio. So I wrote a short story called Malocchio about that subject, so I know it very well. Hey, I want to point out we got Cowgirl. Let's see, Cowgirl in the Sand. Welcome to the Horns Hot Club. She just became a member, so thank you, Cowgirl in the Sand. That's awesome. Good to see some new membership in there, but yeah, I think that for housekeeping stuff here, I think that was all I wanted to put out. Let's see here. The first first one I have on my list, Lucky. This has been really got me going. Is who was the DoorDash driver? Those documents that came out referenced MM. And then in parentheses, it said DoorDash and then EG. So we assume that EG is Eric Goer. I know it's pronounced Goer because people in Moscow corrected me. It's Eric Goer, I'm assuming, is the EG. But then what's the MM? Or who could the MM be? And then somebody in my comments said that it had something to do with like the parent company or some sort of corporate entity that controls DoorDash. So the DoorDash company was being known as, I don't know. It was confusing. As always, there's all sorts of typos and mistakes. Right. Like they don't make it easy for us. But what are your thoughts about this whole DoorDash? Does the DoorDash a red herring, or does it really have something to do with this whole case? I asked you a lot of questions in that. So
yeah, no, I got you. I'm following along with you. I think it could be a red herring, because I feel as though, everything was happening at 4 a.m. If you look at everything, Dylan mentions 4 a.m. in the 911 call. They think that the crimes began at 4 a.m. The DoorDash showed up at 4 a.m. I feel like 4 a.m. was kind of a time that they all kind of like agreed upon or something like that. It's very strange that everything happened at 4 a.m.
But don't you think that was like backwards engineering from when they claimed they saw the white Elantra?
Probably, because if you look at that photo that they released of that, well, it looks like a white 4-door sedan that's kind of pulling up in front of the 1112 house,
right?
From that light bulb camera.
Yeah.
That would have been the exact time that DoorDash would have been pulling up to deliver that food, in my opinion.
No, I agree with you. And I know that one white car they saw, there's that one white car they saw leaving town by that mobile gas station but it was at like 3:45. And see, with my timeline, that fits more with my timeline. I'm thinking that car may have had something to do with it, because I believe that car is the one they found in Eugene, Oregon, a few days later on the side of the road. And then when they did the search for the owner, it was a woman from Colorado, which is even stranger, why her car ends up in Oregon. And then also come to find out that the woman worked for Dan Estee, who was the owner of 1122 King Road, or one of the owners. There was two of them.
Right. I remember hearing that. I remember.
So
I
how
mean,
weird is that?
right. That's odd.
Somebody ends up leaving town, possibly leaving town, and then, yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's like I said, or like you said, in a case of just weird stuff. It just seems like that is just compounding the weirdness. But I do have a feeling that car was the car, that one of the cars at least that they keep seeing. I heard Demetrius's brother drove an Elantra, and somebody contacted me, although they haven't responded, and said they wanted me to release their name, and I could understand why. But they did a Google Earth image on Demetrius, one of the places Demetrius lived, and there's a white Elantra in the driveway.
I've seen that photo. I've seen that photo. Wasn't there a white Elantra in front of Jack Ducour's house as well?
Yes, there was one. And Goer's mom, I think, had a silver one. And of course, in the dark, silver and white are going to be hard to distinguish,
Right. Well, think about this. I mean, they said that there was 90 white four-door Hyundai Elantras registered to park at this university. 90. But they got 22,000 tips. How do you get 22,000 tips from 90? I mean, I realize, some people are going to see the same car a number of times, but 22,000 tips, that sounds crazy.
It does sound crazy. And, not to mention, Lucky, too, you had a home football game. You had Parents' Weekend at WSU across the state line. You had all sorts of stuff going on in Moscow, that axe throwing contest. You had like all this stuff going on, all these cars from out of the area to complicate things even more. And the Elantra is a pretty common car, so
if it was an Elantra.
Exactly. It could have been a Malibu. I mean, there's lots of different ones that they said Focus.
It could have been a lot of different white four-door sedans. I mean, that video footage is horrendous. It's horrible. But when you think about it, I mean, think about the whole idea that law enforcement was right outside, right in the front, writing tickets to students for underage drinking when they believed that Brian Koberger pulled into the neighborhood.
Right.
It's crazy to me. I mean, even the undercovers were driving a white colored four-door sedan.
That's true. And then to compound on what you're saying, and before I forget, here I wanted to shout out Jeremy Pearson for the super chat. Thank you, my friend. And it says, thank you both for everything you do. Keep coming back. So you can rest assured we will be back. We'll be coming
Jeremy
back.
Pearson is awesome. And I want to say thank you to Jeremy Pearson for all of his support as well. He's awesome.
Yeah, thank you, Jeremy. That's really cool. But here you go, Lucky. You got a car accident out in front of this guy's apartment complex when they claim he's leaving.
Yeah.
So that doesn't spook him, okay?
No.
Then he jumps in his car, he drives to Moscow, and there's cops running some sort of nonsense alcohol crackdown on the Banfield, which he would have had to pass to go in there because they were there at like 10 minutes to 4 or 10 minutes to 3.
Right.
And so it's like, how much nerve would you have to drive by two different groups of police officers on each end of the trip and just keep on going with your plan to break into this house with 6 cars in the driveway, and all you got in your hand is a friggin' K-bar knife, you know?
And of course he's driving his own vehicle. So
Right.
he doesn't, I mean, if I'm going to drive my own vehicle, I'm going to park a distance away from the crime scene and just kind of
Right.
walk over. I'm not going to
Yeah.
pull right up to the back door.
Right.
And, you know, that didn't make any sense whatsoever, because people were like, well, what was he going to do? Well, why not just park a distance away and kind of get out of your car and mix in with all the other students that are walking around that night?
Right. You know, I did a video back a while ago where, when I was still in the could Brian have done this or not? And I thought, what if he ran? I mean, he was a runner. So
Right.
how do we know he didn't park, I mean, somewhere in Moscow at Walmart and throw on a backpack and take off? And when he got close, he could have put the balaclava on and done whatever he was going to do, and then go in and do it and then run away. So there is no car.
Right.
There is no car, you know.
There's a neighborhood right behind the King Roadhouse. That would have been perfect for him to park in that neighborhood and just walk down through that tree line. Because I mean, obviously, if he's wearing a Dickies, you know, jumpsuit, and he's holding a big K-bar with the sheath still on it, you know, you might want to be a little discreet, right?
Right. No, agreed. I mean, that's where Matt Moy lived, up on that hill right behind the house. That's why a lot of people wonder if he's the DoorDash driver with the initials MM, or his sister, who was a sorority girl, Madison Moy. I've done videos on both of those two. Definitely some suspicion there. Madison Moy was actually at the Corner Club. Some say she was giving Kaylee some side eye at the Corner Club, and she was there all night. And I wonder if, you know, she was there kind of keeping an eye on her. You know, I think he had a lot of people, I've said this before, involved in this story that may have been just, you make sure that they get from point A to point B, or point B to point C, you know, and it was all an orchestrated event. I know it sounds kind of crazy, but I can't rule anybody out in this one. I mean, I've never seen a case with more suspicious people in the mix.
It's odd. You know, I mean, you got to figure Kaylee and Maddie were just talking to Jack Ducour at the Corner Club. They're on camera talking to Jack Ducour. And then 45 minutes later, he's at home fast asleep in bed.
And they're blowing his phone up. He has no idea that, you know, I mean, I realized they were broken up, and a lot of people said, well, maybe Jack D was with another girl. You know, maybe he didn't want to answer Kaylee's call. And I could understand that. Maybe he just didn't even want to talk to her. Yeah, he may have been burned by her and just been like, F you, but why were they blowing his phone up after they just saw him? And how did he fall asleep that fast? Like, did he like transport himself from the Corner Club to his bed and was asleep within seconds? I mean, it doesn't, like you would say on Unfiltered Lucky, it just doesn't make any sense, you know.
It doesn't. And I want to comment on something that WB in my chat said, that Jack S definitely knew something was up. And I have to agree. I have felt like that from the very beginning, because in my opinion, I do believe that he was there to protect the girls. I don't believe that he was following them in a negative kind of way. I believe that he was there to watch over them. I really do.
Who? For Jake?
Jack, maybe for Jake, but I think that these people knew that something was going on. I think that, you know, why would Jack S? I mean, if you notice in all the footage, he's not really with their group. He's kind of just hanging out in the background, just watching out for them. You know, it doesn't seem, people said, well, you know, it seemed like he was watching, you know, maybe he was keeping an eye on them for other people. Maybe he was keeping an eye on them for Maddie's boyfriend. But I feel like he was there in a protective capacity. I don't feel like, which would mean that something was going on, or they knew that something was going on.
Right. Well, you know
You
what
know,
I thought? I think I saw this in my comments. I get so many good ideas from the comments. I'm sure you do too, Lucky. So all you
absolutely.
guys out there that comment, thank you, because you guys are truly a part of this whole thing. This isn't just us. This is us getting info from you and formulating our own ideas, and it's all part of the community idea. But somebody in my comments made a reference to the 4chan post. And,
Right.
there's people that believe that the person that wrote that 4chan post was British because of the references to the C word, which the swear word for a woman in Britain, they call each other that, like they call each other dude. I mean, they say the C word all the time. And
Yeah.
they use the C word in the 4chan post, and they also use the word whilst, and that's another British thing. Now, this is kind of a crazy idea, but we know that Jack Showalter had family in South Africa, which was a British run. So I wonder, could that 4chan post be written by Showalter as his way of just kind of spilling the beans without and doing it anonymously? Because whoever did it had intimate knowledge of these people. So it would have had to be somebody from within the inside. I know he wasn't Sigma Chi, but he hung with all these guys. Like, he would have known that Ethan's name was E, and he would have known about Loach and about Barry Koa and all these guys. So I don't. I just wonder if it could have been that Jack Showalter was part of that 4chan post because of the slips of using English slang in those text messages. I don't know. I thought it was
Maybe,
interesting.
maybe I think it's a possibility, but I think it's very strange that the 4chan posts, there was a lot in those posts, and I feel like that was right in the beginning,
It
right,
was.
right in the beginning before we
It was
knew
like
a lot
two
of
weeks
stuff,
after it. It was, well, no, about a month after. December 12th were the
right?
first ones. So yeah,
So,
about a month after.
and the same day that Brian Koberger leaves for Pennsylvania.
That's right. That's right. Man,
Oh,
Jeremy Pearson again sent one Murder Metal Mayhem membership
yes,
gifted. So thanks, man.
I
Thanks,
really appreciate
Jeremy.
that.
You're awesome, dude. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that, well, and also, what about the text messages between Steve Gonsalves and Howard Bloom's assistant or whatever was going on there? Have you
Right.
seen those text messages? If you follow, I actually got into all those text messages last night, and I was looking through all of them, and man, it's like he was telling the story with all of the information that we know now.
Really? I don't
Absolutely.
think
I
I've
mean,
seen the messages.
I'll
You
send them
did
to
it
you.
in a video?
I haven't made a video about it because we couldn't confirm it. You can't really confirm it. Now I believe that Howard Bloom did come out and confirm those messages,
Oh
but
wow.
I'll send them to you.
Yeah.
I have the whole thing, and they're very, very. It's crazy how close together the information that he's talking about. Because at first I was like, this might not even be Steve Gonsalves, but in the messages now, with what we know now, it's almost like he was just telling the story.
Wow.
It's odd, and I don't think Steve Gonsalves knows a whole lot, but I think he knows a lot more than we do.
Oh, I'm sure he does. I'm
You
sure he
know,
does, especially if he had that private investigator looking into this case, and then supposedly the FBI told him to chill out. He was getting too close, maybe.
right?
We got one here from let's see, Scary Scooby, talking about the blood and dogs being attracted to it, and he was wondering, or she was wondering, what was Murphy doing while all this was happening? What do you think, Lucky? I don't have a lot of experience with dogs. I have a dog, but I don't have a background in it. But what about you? Do you know much about that, or what do you think about what Murphy How does Murphy factor into all this?
I don't know. That's so strange how Murphy even factors in, because what did they say? They said they found Murphy in Kaylee's bedroom with the door wide open.
Oh, the door was open?
Yeah. And
wow.
he was just basically standing in Kaylee's bedroom, which
wow.
I think that's strange.
Yeah, with a house full of people, you'd think he'd be all over the house, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I don't feel as though, well, and didn't Murphy end up, I think Murphy was outside at some point.
Yeah, because Jack came and got him, I think. I believe that's what happened, was Jack came and got him.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, but I think that Murphy was outside before that.
Okay.
Well,
I mean, he would have had to have been. How these are like the strongest bladders on the face of the earth between Dylan and Bethany and Murphy. Not one mention of anybody going pee. Not one mention. You're out drinking all night, especially the amount of alcohol Dylan, and I put in air quotes, claimed she drank. And she didn't have to go to the bathroom once. I mean, she didn't go by Ethan and Xana's room once where the bathroom was. That just doesn't seem believable.
They said 10 White Claws, champagne, and a gallon of Borg.
Yeah.
And this girl doesn't have to go to the restroom at all?
Right. Yeah. Mimosas, 10 White Claws, the Borg, and then alcohol playing drinking games too. Yeah. It's ridiculous.
I mean, and I feel like I never went to college, but I remember crashing a lot of college parties, and I feel like there was a lot of drinking games, a lot of power drinking, stuff like that. And, I don't know that Dylan, I know that they said she drank it throughout the course of the day.
Right.
But I don't know that.
I'm not seeing it. You know what I think is, I think she told the cops that this was part of the plan, was to get her off the radar, because they would have figured if she was that hammered, she was passed out in her room and she was useless. So she wouldn't be suspect. That's what I think they came up with this plan. What they should have done, and I doubt they did do, was piss test her or blood test her to find out, was she truly that drunk? Because I'm betting she wasn't. If she was involved in this, she might have had a few to take the edge off, but she sure as hell wasn't drinking all of that. Because if that were the case, she'd be getting her damn stomach pumped at the local hospital and not out there wielding a blade like Zelda or something. She would have been incapacitated. And I think that's what she wanted them to think.
Well, that's always weird that the coroner said that she didn't believe that any toxicology reports would matter.
Yeah. Exactly.
That's strange.
Yeah, because I threw out the idea, what if they were gassed or put to sleep? We heard the early whispers of they were all overdosed. And then it was they were shot. Kaylee was shot at a party.
Right.
And then it was Charles Manson came rolling in and did all that. So that's why I proposed in my wake and fake video that I just did, was what if this timeline's totally shifted? I said in the video, I don't really believe that. I do believe that things happened around 3 o'clock, which is what I'm guessing, not 4 o'clock. But if you're to just suspend belief for a minute and think outside the box, I think that's what it's going to take to blow this case open. Is somebody's going to have to come up with something we were told that we were anchoring onto as fact, and then find out it's not fact. And then it's like, wait a minute, now it's a completely different thing. And maybe the timeline is off dramatically one way or another. I don't know.
I agree. I think it's very possible that timeline could be off, because if you remember, well, you got to figure these times are all messed up. We heard that Xana was on TikTok at 4:12, but it turns out she was actually on TikTok at 3:16.
Right.
So why tell us 4:12? And then when the mayor came out, not only did he call it a crime of passion, but he also stated that the crimes happened between 3 and 4.
Right.
So who was passing that information along to the mayor?
Yeah, because Kathy Mabbitt originally said, what, 2 o'clock? 2 to 3 was when she thought they expired.
I think Kathy Mabbitt put her foot in her mouth a few times. I think that they
so
just
too.
wanted her to stop doing interviews.
I think so too.
They're like, just stop, no more.
I think so too. But yeah, I think let's see, is that Patricia Pauly? I can't read it very well, but thanks you for the super chat. I appreciate that very much. You guys are awesome.
I just want to say really quick that I'm trying to answer and also pay attention and stuff, but it's hard because I just want to say that this is really, really a cool community. This is such a neat community of people, and I want to respond to everyone because I really appreciate everyone.
There's so many good ones, guys. It is hard. That's a good point. I'm scrolling through it. I'm like, I wish we could answer all of them.
I really do, because I really appreciate everyone who's in this chat. This is a really good, there's some really good conversations going on in this chat, and just such a neat community. I'm so proud to be a part of this community, and it really means a lot to me. So I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, that's super cool. I know when I first thought about doing the channel for real, I watched you, I watched, Harsh, I watched some different ones and saw what I liked, and I'm glad to be part of the community. I mean, I tried to break into the community by offering to interview you guys just so I could learn more of you, and your fans could learn more of you. And you responded, and AR responded, and a lot of the creators I reached out to didn't respond. And it's like, okay, well, that's cool, but we three have really had a good bond between us, and we do communicate with each other outside of the YouTube world. I know you and AR talk a lot.
Yeah.
And me and AR talk about a lot, quite a bit. I know, that you and I do speak a little bit, but not as much as we probably will as we go down the road. But I agree, man. It's a cool community, and very humbled that you guys take out the time of your night to hang out here with me and Lucky and talk about this case, because I had 4 or 5 different topics to cover, and we haven't even finished covering the first one. There's so much to talk about with this case, but I do think there's something important about the DoorDash. I think that DoorDash was either to make sure the coast was clear to do it, or that the job was done and reporting back. Some pivotal piece of information was gathered, I think, by the DoorDash driver. And maybe the pirouettes around the house and circling like you're drawing a Etch-a-Sketch around that house was meant to be done to distract the cops, because it obviously did, because they don't know what the hell's going on,
Right.
I think it's very possible somebody did that DoorDash in a sedan, a white sedan that got picked up, and maybe that's where it's confusing them. But I don't know. But I still think
anyone.
it's important about that DoorDasher, and I don't know what it is. And if it's Eric Goer, you remember when the police first talked to him, he's all kinds of sketchy, right? It took him 9 days to go to the cops that says he was the private driver.
Right.
Why did it take him that long? He took a week off of work after these crimes. Why? He worked.
Well, and if you remember, and I don't know if you remember this, but in one of the very first interviews that Steve and Christy Gonzalez did, Steve said that the driver was a family friend.
Right.
So that was strange that, he made it sound like this was just a friend of the family.
Right. It is strange. And of course, he's got all kinds of ties to law enforcement. His wife works at the Moscow Police Department in the FOIA requests, which is kind of fitting. Right. and then he was playing Santa at the company at the Christmas parties at the police department. So he was all buddies with these guys.
What wasn't he the one with the bat shetty?
He was. His Pinterest page had the bat shetty. Now you talk about the wounds inflicted on these victims as they've been described. Wouldn't a bat shetty be a little bit more appropriate as a weapon than a K-bar knife or something like that?
Well, I mean, that's one thing about Steve Gonsalves is he said that one of the investigators told him that this was a very powerful, strong weapon that was used in this crime. And it was a weapon that he believed that the owner was proud of, that it was something special to whoever owned it.
Oh, wow.
Which I always thought was kind of strange because I was like, that doesn't sound like a K-bar to me.
No. We've talked about the K-bar before. I mean, I would still love to see some sort of autopsy report that would report back of what kind of weapon made these wounds. What were the size of the wounds? Were they made by a knife? Were they made by a hatchet or a billy club or a golf club or a chainsaw or a pea shooter? I mean, what the hell were they using? So we could then talk about it. But this whole air of mystery around it, we have no idea if the K-bar knife was even part of the weaponry used. So if it wasn't, then why are we worrying about a sheath? I mean, for all we know, that sheath could have been on the bed and the knife was lost,
Yeah.
and it was just the sheath laying on her bed.
I agree. And I want to say real quick, I want to expand on the sheath thing, but I want to say that Nina from Warning Label Nina, she said that he did clarify himself later that he was talking about a good friend of the girls, not necessarily a good friend of the family.
Oh,
so
okay.
I think that would be that could, because it was weird that Dylan messaged him 15 minutes after he dropped the girls off.
Very weird.
So
what
I can
was she
see that.
messaging him about? Was she at the house and needed a ride away, or was she away and needed a ride to the house?
Yeah, that's the thing. Nina always has good information. So I always like to I always pay attention to what she's saying. But I want to talk about the sheath for a second.
Yeah,
because this is what's weird to me about this K-bar knife sheath, because obviously it has the USMC logo on it, which would make it extremely identifiable. And what I don't understand, and this is something I've never understood, is why was there just a small amount of Brian Koberger's DNA on the button snap? It was minuscule. His DNA should have been all over that knife sheath if it belonged to him. And people always say, well, he wiped it down. And I'm like, why would he wipe it down? He wasn't planning on leaving it there.
Right.
Why would he wipe the knife sheath down? It wasn't part of the plan to leave this knife sheath on the bed. So why would he wipe it down? That knife sheath should have had his DNA all over it.
Yeah, and plus leather is porous, so wouldn't it retain it? Like, how do you get leather to have zero DNA on it? Like, if it was ever there, I would think it would stay there for a long time. You'd have to have some sort of, I would assume, I'm not a chemist, but some sort of chemical bath or something they did to get anything off of it, because I would think with it being leather that it would retain that and not be like an easily cleanable surface like plastic or metal or something. What do you think?
Well, I mean, I'm sure you have, you were in the military. I'm sure you were familiar with knives and sheaths and how much DNA would be on a knife sheath when you really think about it, but I mean, this is meant to be held close to your body. And I just can't imagine that all they found was that one little minuscule piece of touch DNA. If he really did own this knife sheath. Now, I do want to say, to be fair, I do feel as though this Amazon situation, this is something I'm looking into right now, because like I've always said, I try to look at both sides. Sure. And I'm having a hard time with this Amazon.
Really?
History. I feel like, how do you attempt to buy another K-bar knife. I don't understand. I've never attempted to buy something on Amazon. I've always just looked it up and I buy it. I don't really make an attempt
Well,
to
I've had
buy
it
it.
before. I'll put it in my shopping cart and forget it's there, and then the next time I go there, I see, oh shoot, I didn't order that.
I've done that as well, but that's kind of a hang up for me. And I'm going to do a video about that because, like I've always said, the whole idea that, I mean, a K-bar is it's a common knife,
right.
but I'm just, for some reason, I can't get over this Amazon. I can't get over this Amazon purchase. And I'm really looking into it right now. I'm not saying it's anything, but it's something that I'm really diving into.
I'd love to hear what you got to say about it because I don't really fully understand it. So I'd
Right.
love to, because I've watched a couple things about it. Like Lana did something on Truth and Transparency, which I love Lana's channel, but whoo, it was going in the weeds, and I was having a hard time understanding what they were talking about. So
It's interesting that it's interesting. It's very interesting. And I think that when I first heard about the Amazon purchase, I'm thinking, okay, I mean, it wouldn't be uncommon to buy a K-bar knife along with other camping equipment, in my opinion. I mean, it would never shock me that someone who was an outdoors person would have a K-bar in their pack. That wouldn't surprise me at all because they can be used for a lot of things.
Right.
But if he went back and tried to purchase another K-bar right after the crimes were committed,
that is suspicious for sure.
That's odd. And I feel like that's something I'm trying to dive into that right now because, like I said, I'm not on any side. I really do want to look at everything from all of the different angles. And, I want the person who committed this crime to be held accountable. And I think that in order to do that, we have to look at all sides of this. We can't just look at the Brian Koberger's innocent side. We have to look at all of the information, in my opinion. At least I do. I have to do that.
No, I think it's important. I don't think we should. I've said it too, that if there's evidence that comes out that he actually did this, then I'm saying, he needs to be found guilty and let whatever happens to him because this is heinous. But so far I haven't seen that, but it's interesting that you're saying this about the knife. And I think of what in the world is a guy with the criminal justice background and all this smarts and buying the weapon he's going to carry out this quadruple homicide with on Amazon. I mean, a guy with a cloud-based forensics master's degree going for his PhD is going to do something like that. It just seems so stupid that it almost seems like somebody's setting him up. That somebody knew he'd be easy to pin this on,
that's what makes this so odd. What makes this so odd is that none of this really adds up for somebody that knows about how to collect evidence. I don't, none of it really would make a lot of sense to me, but I've also, so a couple days ago, as you know, I do a lot of camping. I do a lot of, I'm outdoors a lot, and I live in an area where I'm surrounded by great camping, and that's why I live here. And a couple days ago, I went out to go. There's a spot I go to a lot, and it's about an hour and a half north of where I live. And I was going out there. I wanted to go check it out because there's a lot of runoff and a lot of snow, stuff like that. So I wanted to see how long it's going to be before we can get our 4-wheel drives in there.
Yeah.
And so I went out there by myself, and there's one area where you turn left into the forest, and that's where you lose cell phone service. And it was funny because I pulled left, I lost cell phone service, and my first thought was, I don't have an alibi right now. I don't have anybody who can confirm where I'm at. I don't have anybody my phone's off. I don't have anybody to confirm where I'm at. This could happen to anybody. And but I was also thinking, if they asked me, I could tell them right away.
Right.
There's so much that doesn't add up in this case. And like I said, I think that's why so many people are following this case, is because there's just so much that doesn't make sense. And when you look at the information, you don't get, you get a very unsettling feeling that something else is going on. At least I do.
Oh yeah.
In this
Something
investigation.
bigger going on in the background here.
Right.
Like a bigger investigation. We've heard that before, that maybe these guys were like in the way. This was not meant to happen, kind of a thing. I also find it very odd that 6 people would be living in this house, and all of them, but what, maybe one of them had parents with jaded backgrounds, trafficking offenses. Like,
Right.
how is that possible? Like, if you were, I'm not a mathematician, but if you were to take the odds of 6 people and randomly draw their names and put them in a house, how is that possible? And if people have asked, how is Dylan living off campus when she's a freshman?
Right.
Why is she there? Like, is there a reason she's there? Are these all informants? And they're being protected?
I mean, I know just from experience that a lot of colleges, when you're a freshman, if you're going to live there, you're required to live in the dorms as a freshman.
Right. Yeah. My wife was saying the same thing where she went to college.
Right.
I didn't go, so I don't know, but that's what they claim is, you gotta live in the dorm. So
right.
how did she get the okay to live there? Maybe she didn't. Maybe she was assigned a dorm room and just lived there anyway. Who knows?
Or maybe it was because since the house was off campus, maybe it was just considered her renting an off-campus house.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I assume that she would be able to, if she lived at home. Well, I would assume that if she had a house off of campus, that she could live off of campus.
Right.
So maybe she was just able to rent off of campus. But it's always been my experience that freshmen live in the dorms if you're going to live, on campus.
Right. Right. Yeah, it's just strange. It's just like you said, everywhere you look, there's some other question here. So we're at, and this has just flown by. We're at 9:18 here, so we're getting close to the end. But I don't want to ignore your questions. I'm just gonna scroll through here and see if there's any that pop out at me. Yeah, here Jamie Peace says, just because he was driving doesn't mean he's the killer. So, like you said, Lucky, you could be, if he was at that Huawei Park and he lost a signal. I don't understand what the problem is about the alibi. I mean, that's his alibi. What does he want to get a squirrel to say that he saw him out there or something? I mean, what kind of alibi are you gonna get?
It's a great point. It's just like I said. I was out there just scouting campsites. So I was out there by myself, and there would be nobody that would be able to confirm where I was at during that time.
Right.
And that's not a strange occurrence for me. I think that most people who live in rural areas could catch themselves in that situation at any time.
Oh yeah, my dad has had it. My dad's a big avid hunter and fisherman, and he's been in all sorts of places all over the world hunting and stuff. And yeah, you get in some rural areas, there's no cell phone, there's nothing. Good point.
I mean, that's why we go out there.
Sure.
That's why I go out there. I don't want my cell phone to work. I want to go out there and enjoy the outdoors. I want to be out there standing in a stream fishing or something. I don't want my cell phone going off.
Exactly. Here, Catherine S., Catherine S. is a fantastic supporter of this channel. I know she supports AR's channel. I'm assuming she's a supporter of yours too.
Yeah, she does.
Lucky. But she says, do we know when the trial is yet? I think it's August 11th, if I'm not mistaken, Catherine. I saw that somewhere. Ran Henniger says, great to see you guys together. So thank you. Let's see.
Oh yeah, WB, you never go. You never go camping without protection. You never know.
Yeah. Well, you never know what's going to roll up on you.
You never know what's going to roll up on you. And let me tell you, I don't know if you ever watched those scary camping videos on YouTube, but yeah, I always am protected when I go out to the woods. That's for sure.
Well, the Army broke me of camping, because you say the word camping, and you know what I hear? Our nails scratching a chalkboard and bleeding as they go down the chalkboard, because I was in the field so much in the Army that I don't ever want to camp another day in my life. I slept in many a tent. I took many a baths with a bucket of water. And yeah, I was sick of it. But I was at Fort Hood, Texas, sweating to death, doing nuclear biological training, because Saddam Hussein was gassing people at the time.
Yeah.
And they were training us for gas attacks, wearing a charcoal suit, sweating to death in Texas. Yeah, the last thing I want to do is go camping. But I'm all for you going camping, Lucky, and I agree you got to be protected.
I'll tell you, it's something that I love. It's something that it's kind of my peace, it's kind of my peace. I'll tell you a funny story real quick. I thought I saw a UFO. And
wow.
Oh man, we were up north in northern New Mexico, almost to Colorado. We were at a place called Hopewell Lake, and the lake is horrible fishing, but great camping. And it was probably about midnight, and we were sitting around the fire, and I'm looking up in the sky, and I see this light, and it's blinking on and off, and it's bright, and then I see two of them, and they're blinking together, and then I see three of them, and then I see four of them, and there ended up being about 12 lights that were all blinking, and I'm freaking out. I got this on video. I'm watching this. I'm gonna make a video about this, everything else, and went to bed really believing I had just seen a UFO. And the next morning I woke up and I found out it was Starlink.
Oh, shoot.
So I didn't get to see a UFO, but almost.
Yeah, that would have been pretty wild. That would have been pretty wild.
It was funny.
Yeah, I definitely would have freaked out seeing a UFO for sure. I know the first time I ever went to the field in the Army, it was me and a guy from New York, another guy from New York. We were pulling a guard duty out in the middle of nowhere, just me and him. And all of a sudden we heard something rustling in the bushes, and we were like, what the hell's that? It's shining a flashlight on it. It about scared the two of us to death because we had never seen one before. It was an armadillo.
Oh.
And the guys back at the base were laughing their ass off that the two guys from New York were freaking out over an armadillo. But I'd never seen one before. I was like, what the hell is that?
I've never seen one. I've never seen one in real life.
It was a trip. Yeah, I was like, whoa. But let's see. Yeah, somebody here, PA Cajole 27 says money laundering, druggy college. So there could have been money laundering going on at that house. I mean, something was going on at that house. I think that's why Hunter was always there.
Right.
I think Hunter was kind of keeping tabs on them to make sure if there was product being stored there, or maybe it was money, who knows. But I think if it was going on there, it was in that other basement bedroom where there was nobody staying, where Ashland Couch or whoever was supposed to be living there, and that bedroom was empty. I think stuff was going on in there. And I also have come to wonder if these people that did this crime weren't lying in wait in that room, because you know what else is in that room? The main power panel for that house. So how convenient would that have been and I'm going to my army training. You kill the lights and you hit those people when they're asleep, drunk and asleep with no lights. And they make night vision now. You could buy it on Amazon for $40. Cheap night vision where they would have been able to see them strapped to their head. And you could have gone through there and made quick work of that. And then when you left, flip the lights back on and go out the front door. Front door was wide open anyway. So
Yeah. Paula Coco's asking, do you think that we'll hear about this alternate suspect?
I hope so. Boy, I'm like dying to see the perp walk of Dylan Mortensen or one of these frat boys. I'd be licking my lips to see somebody finally getting brought to justice in this case, because I really have my doubts about Brian. But like you, I'm trying to keep my mind open. I'm not sold on the fact that he didn't have any involvement. It's always possible.
I'll say, I don't feel like I have seen solid evidence that would lead me to believe that Bryan Kohberger committed this crime. I really don't. And I'm looking for that. I think a lot of people think that a lot of us are just looking for reasons for Bryan Kohberger to be innocent. And that's not the case for me, because I want to see it from all angles. I want to see all of the information. I want to see everything. And because in my opinion, I mean, I feel like we would have seen something solid by now. I don't feel like the video footage of the white car to me is anything solid. I don't feel like the touch DNA is anything solid, although I do think it's one hell of a coincidence. Sure. And I don't feel like I haven't seen anything solid that would make me say, yeah, he definitely, committed this crime.
Right.
But I still always keep my mind open, and in case we see something,
No, I agree. I think that's a smart way to go. Look at here. Yeah, Jacob Wayne says, how did the perp know no one else other than those 6 people were in that house? Exactly, man. It's a party house, home football game, 6 cars in the lot. I mean, shit, there could have been 20 people in that house. Not to mention the fact that most of the people that hung out at that house didn't even drive or didn't need to drive. They lived within walking distance of the house. So you'd have to have somebody on the inside. There's no way you're going to convince me, short of it being a raving maniac that wouldn't even care what was going on, just stumbled into that house, which I don't think is the case, but that anybody's going in that house with a knife. I mean, if you had a gun, it'd be different. We don't know that he didn't have a gun.
That's what I've said all
along. Possible, a 3D printed gun, that you could have faked it and gotten everybody to listen to do what you told them,
Right. I think, well, and in those text messages, Steve Gonzalez makes a point that this person wouldn't have known Kaylee's car because that was the first time that it had ever been to that house.
Right.
And I believe it was Ethan that had an unfamiliar car that would have been at that house as well.
Yeah, I had somebody in my comments talking about that car that Ethan had, and he had a lot of suspicion that it was one of the other triplets vehicles or something. And why was Ethan driving it? And
right.
There's all sorts of questions surrounding the whole Chapin family. I mean, with those kids, and they sent them back to the school afterward. I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't have done it. That's for sure.
It would be weird. I think it would be strange to have to go back to that school. I mean,
right.
I think that would be odd because, people are talking. I mean, this is a small town. They might not be talking to us, but they're talking to each other,
Right. I see here somebody Sip Anon says not at his college, freshmen could live anywhere. So Maybe
Okay.
it's not a thing there. Maybe it's not a thing there.
Yeah, and it might not be an everywhere thing. It's just been
Yeah,
my experience,
makes you
my
wonder.
experience. Yeah, with and so but it might not be an everyday thing. I mean, I think, I imagine you could probably live wherever, but uh,
Right?
as a freshman, I know that they have certain rules at certain colleges.
For sure, for sure. Well, we are at that 90-minute mark, and it just flew right by like I knew it would. So we'll definitely have you back, Lucky, to keep talking Idaho 4. And people, if you're not familiar with Lucky's channel, please go and support what he's doing. We take a moment to like the video. If you're on the replay crew, drop a comment down in the bottom and let everybody know what you think about it. If anybody wants to do a donation, I got that at the bottom there. If you want to do anything like that, that's there for you. But with that, I think we've done what we set out to do. Talking some Idaho 4. There's of course plenty to talk about. We still got a ways to go till August 11th, and then even after that, I mean, you got 2 months of the trial, and you got appeals, and oh my gosh, it seems like this will never end. What do you think, Lucky?
Yeah, who knows? And then even after, I think, regardless of whether he's found guilty or not guilty, I think there's going to still be more to talk about even after that. And
Right.
you never know. But I'm sorry, Pete. I feel like you and I just got to talking, and I feel like we missed a bunch of the subjects that you wanted to talk about. But I really
No,
had a
it's
great.
always that way. I make
I
a
had a
list
great
and
time.
I get through maybe one of them. So no, it's fine.
I had
I
a great
have a
time.
connection. No, that's how they always are. Yeah, no, that's what I figured was going to happen. So
We'll have to do it
very
again.
cool.
It's always like that with us.
It
we
is.
kind of get to talking but it's great. It's great. And I feel like everyone had a good time. I hope that everyone had a good time,
Yeah,
because that's always my goal, is to, I want it to be just people sitting around talking and talking about true crime, hanging out. And it's always a great environment. So I really appreciate that.
definitely. And if you like the solved cases, like I said, check out the podcast. It's on
Yeah.
the channel under the podcast tab. But I will warn you, it's not PG-13 like these videos are. The language is rough. The subject matter is very rough. There's no filter. There's no trigger warning. It's like an all-out assault. So if that's your bag, then go check it out. If it's not, then don't do it and come crying to me that you don't like it. Okay. I'm telling you, it's not for everybody, but a lot of people really love it. We're getting ready to retweak it because I'm coming back to the podcast now. I've been off of it for 10 months or so with all the stuff that's happened to me. But as soon as my eyes are fixed, I'm going to restart it up again. Right now, I can't. But once that's fixed in June, you could expect the podcast to come back. And so that's solved cases. Unsolved cases will be on the channel like these. So,
Well, I'll
but
tell you, it's been exciting to watch you, Pete, and I'm excited that you're back. And
thanks,
it's been
dude.
really exciting to watch your channel. Like it's, for me, I've always said that I want us all to win, and so it's really
Right.
cool to see your channel, because you deserve it, and it's really cool to see your channel grow, and it's something. It's really fun to watch for me.
Likewise, man. I got to confess something to you, Lucky. My
What's that?
mom, my mom, who's been hanging out in the chat. I don't know if she's been here tonight. I always seem to miss her when she's in the chat. But if she was in the chat for the first time and we were talking and she told me she was in the chat, and I was like, really? And she was like, she didn't really know much about the case. And she said, well, where do I go to find out, like the basics, like, and you were in the middle of doing like a look back. You were like really walking us through like the various steps here, not that long ago, within the last couple months. You had
Right.
done some videos that were kind of, and I told my mom, I said, Mom, write this down. I said, go to Unfiltered Lucky and go watch his videos. I could have told my mom to watch my videos, but I thought My videos are special. They're like only 10 minutes long, where you do the longer form stuff. And I thought your videos would be better for somebody who's new to it, that needs it gone through thorough like you do, as compared to me just pulling little snippets out here and there. So I told my own mom to go to Unfiltered Lucky before I told her to go to my own channel. So,
well, I appreciate that. Thank you, Patricia.
She's a subscriber to your channel now. So,
oh, that's awesome. I appreciate that. And thank you, Patricia Sell, for gifting a membership. She's I believe she's been with me from the beginning, and I really appreciate her. So thank you, Patricia.
That's awesome. That's awesome. All right, guys. Well, have a good night. And Lucky, I'll see you next time, my friend.
We'll see you soon. Have a good night.
All right.
Bye-bye.